Well, let me look here, and I want to see what city you guys are coming from. I always like to see that. Let's see, Diana Parker, how are you from Tampa? Tara Redmond, good to see you. Angel, I see you. Ryan Jackson says, we appreciate you, Doc. I appreciate you too. Thank you very much for saying that. Nigel, Orlando B1, Mr. Jan Jasmine, Jacksonville, Florida, Las Vegas, JEY. Let's see, is that Jamal? I can't read the whole name. JAMAU from Rockland County. You know what? I knew a nice person. I had a really believe it or not, I was actually engaged to a lady from Rockland County years ago. And I love my wife, don't get me wrong, but this lady that I was engaged to years ago, I actually proposed to her on the Wendy Williams show. How crazy is that? Yeah, seriously. I was on the Wendy Williams Experience back when Wendy had a really good radio show with Charlemagne the God, and I proposed to her on that show, which I don't know, that was just me being weird. And I just kind of believe if you love somebody, you let the whole world know how much you love them. And then, when I finally really got married years later, I let y'all see that, and I kind of think that if you really love somebody, you shouldn't be ashamed of it. And that's just what it is. So that's, if you want to know why I did that, it's also because I think Black love is such an important part of our existence and our experience. And I really feel like we as Black people should, just take pride in loving each other, just really understand what Black love really means in terms of our survival and in our future. If we don't love each other, then we won't reproduce. And if we don't reproduce, then we will die. So it's not just, about dating the prettiest girl and stuff like that. I think it's deeper. It's far deeper than that. And I would encourage you to sort of process how you view each other and how we view our relationships and, all that good stuff. That way we're not, trapped or tricked into a type of thinking that becomes harmful, to our community, or get into thinking that, that dating and all that is just about booty calls and one night stands. It's also reproduction and all these other important things that happen that allow a species to exist. Right. So I really honor Black women because a Black woman gave life to me. And when I was 16, I promised my mother that I would only, she didn't ask me to make the promise, but I promised her, I said, if I get married, I'm gonna marry me a Black woman. I'm not gonna marry nobody else. And that's what I stuck to. Now, let me see here. I'm looking at some of your questions here, and I see some of you are asking about the Telegram page. Mr. Jasmine, do you have to be invited to join Telegram? I don't think you have to be invited. Will you give me a yes if you were able to get into the Telegram page, and I'll give you the URL if you want to do a direct URL. Maybe that'll help. If you go to drboycetelegram.com, that's where our Telegram page is. Were you able to get in? Give me a yes really quick if you were able to get onto the Telegram channel. We call that the Black Investors Group. That's the name I gave it. And I'll add value for you, when you're in there. Let's see here. It allowed us immediate access. This K. Russell. Rochelle said no. What's the Telegram? What Telegram channel? Yeah, I put a link in here. I'll repaste it. Chanel, I know you're in here. If you see that Telegram link, I'm gonna post it one more time. Can you make sure everybody has access to it? Just kind of store that link. I should have gave it to you earlier. Give me 1 second here. I'll put it in the chat so you guys can see it. And this is it's a private group. It's not listed publicly. It's a place where I'll throw up, stock selections and things like that, or content that will benefit you. So feel free to take a look at that. And I see Yoshika's in here. And so let me know also that you can hear me okay, and that I'm coming through all right. I want to make sure that my audio is good. I'm actually in Denmark right now, and I've been traveling for a little while. It's a family affair. My daughter's moving, so I was helping her get everything done, and we went to Iceland and Denmark. Here we go. There's the link right there. In case you don't see it. There were two fake accounts with your name months ago. Yeah, AC, I can't stop the fake accounts. They're just everywhere. And, I can just say, if I pop up in your inbox and I start trying to talk you into buying crypto from me or something, and I'm like, hey, brother, did you buy the $5,000 worth of crypto? That's not me. I'm not selling anybody's crypto and all this other stuff. And one way to check or to verify things is if you email support@theblackbusinessschool.com. They can confirm that it's whether it's me or not, and that'll help keep you protected, because there are fake scammers out here, and I can't stop all those fake accounts. They're just kind of everywhere. And also one more thing I want to mention too is the next two book club meetings. During the book club meeting, I'm going to do, a lot of you have had an interest in stock options. And so I'm doing a stock options training camp during the next two book club meetings. And so we can't do training camps and stuff like that totally for free, but because you're a member of the book club, we arranged to give you a pretty massive discount. Chanel, can you share that link? We're taking 72% off anybody that wants to join. All the Prime members get in for free. And so if you're a member of drboyceprime.com, you can get in for free. If you are in the book club, you get 72% off. So Chanel, I don't know if you have that link, if you can pop that in there so everybody can see it. And make sure that you can get access if you'd like to come in. So that's what we're going to do for the next 2 weeks. I wanted to do it at a different time. The problem is my schedule's so jam-packed that I literally could not find other times to pop it in there. So that's what we're going to do for 2 weeks, okay? And so we'll do everything we can to give you access and stuff like that. If you have any questions or any issues, and I think, I don't remember what the total cost is, but it's not very much when you take so much off of the price. And also, am I going to be in Atlanta for the B1 movie? I forgot to mention that. Yeah, I'm going to be in Atlanta the weekend of August 17th through the 20th, doing I'm going to do a one-day workshop on Saturday. Now, I'm not going to be there every single day, but we are releasing the new film B1 the movie, directed by Rick Mathis. It's got a lot of good people in it. Dr. Claude Anderson is in it. Queen Afua is in it. Riza Islam is in it. Vicky Dillard is in it. Professor James Small is in it. Akila Nihonda is in it. She's a great young rapper and a smart lady. D1 is in it. He's at Harvard University, but he's also a great hip hop artist. And so we spent 3 years making this film, and we hope you'll check it out. If you'd like to go to the premiere, just go to B1B and the number one, themovie.com. I'll type that in so you guys can take a look. And so if you happen to be in Atlanta, I'll be at the new Black Wall Street. And I'm going to do a workshop on Saturday. Okay. So if you want to come for the workshop, you can. If you don't want to come to the workshop, or if you want to come on a different day, that's okay too. How is my mom doing? Doing better. You know, it's the hardest year. I'm going to get to the book now, because I don't want to talk too much about my personal stuff, but it's probably the hardest year that my family has ever had, you know, and I'll be honest about that. It's literally the hardest year of my entire life, family wise. And so you just kind of keep on moving, you keep on trucking, and you know, it's life. You know, you can't let things slow you down. So I'm gonna be here until my casket drops. I would be here doing this every day. All right, so here's the book that we're gonna read this week. We're gonna read from the Black History Reader. And thank you for the prayers, Ryan. I appreciate that. The Black History Reader by Dr. Claude Anderson. His books are at powernomics.com. And this book is let's see, I got a backdrop, so it might be harder to see it, but here's the book. It looks like this. It's got an American flag on it. And I believe this book is a book everybody should read. And yes, Marina, we are going to show the film at the All Black National Convention. allblacknationalconvention.com is the link you can go to buy your passes for the convention. And the discounted hotel rooms are going to run out pretty soon. But if you would like to join, just go to allblacknationalconvention.com, and you can attend. You can become a vendor, whatever the case, whatever you'd like to do. All right, so this book by Dr. Claude Anderson, called The Black History Reader, is a really important book right now, because I've mentioned to you all that I'm not really sure why we need white people to teach us our history. I don't understand who made up that rule that Black people are only capable of learning if there's a white person at the front of the classroom. And I say that because there's a lot of conversation about, you know, about what history is going to be taught in school. You know, give me a yes if you've seen this, if you've sort of followed this debate about, you know, Republicans that are perhaps rightfully so, are whitewashing history, and the public schools. But the problem is that the Republicans are whitewashing history and not teaching the right things. The Democrats are just not teaching at all. The Democrats are, you know, Democratic run districts do not have good schools when it comes to Black kids. In Chicago, I always mention that there was 55 schools in Chicago that didn't have a single child that was proficient in reading, writing, or math. And it's very important to understand these are your children. They're ruining your children. You know, why would you drop your child off to a babysitter who is putting poison in your kid's oatmeal every morning? You know, why would you take your child to a daycare where they're doing harmful things to the kids, and you know, touching them inappropriately or beating them up every day. Like, why would you do that? And that's pretty much what I see when I see the public schools. The public schools are just absolutely terrible. And it's not like I have to make an argument that they're terrible. The data just jumps out and slaps you in the face. I don't understand. It is absolutely a monumental task to be able to take millions of Black children and make sure that none of them can read, write, or do math at grade level. I mean, you really have to work hard at that to keep us in that position. And one of the reasons why I like reading Dr. Anderson's books and books like The Black History Reader is because Dr. Anderson explains that this was not accidental. This is also not new. This is by design. This is according to plan. This is not new. They didn't start doing this in 2005. They've been doing that since public schools came into existence. They were doing that even before public schools existed, because the goal, according to Dr. Anderson and his books, another book that we read, Black Labor, White Wealth, all these books are at powernomics.com. According to Dr. Anderson, the goal was to make sure that Black people were, as he referred to, that they were a hardworking, uncompetitive group of people who were pretty much uninformed. Their goal was to make sure that you were always a day late and a dollar short, that you never really knew what was happening, and that but yet you were always very loyal to the very systems that served to harm and exploit you. This is all true. We did one session where we literally read through 85 laws. I mean, you want to talk about what systematic racism looks like? And what it means to be on code. They wrote 85 laws. They literally put in the legal code, talking about on code, they put in the legal code 85 different laws that basically were designed for one purpose. And that was, how do we control these Negroes? How do we make sure Black people can never compete with white people? How do we make sure Black people never steal our resources? How do we make sure Black people can never actually know what's going on? How do we make sure Black people are going to always be servants to the system and never beneficiaries? All this is documented. So when you see the community now, and shout out to people like Neely Fuller and others. Neely Fuller is a great Black man. If you haven't looked into his work, you should. But I love guys like him because he explains various ways that they systematically ensure that Black people are not able to compete with white people, and that we're so confused and fighting each other and having all kinds of chaos in our communities that we can't actually advance and can't actually get things done. So I started this book club because I wanted us to have our own version of a public school system, right? This is my version of the public school system. I'm an educator. You guys know my background. I've been a college professor for a long time. And the thing is that you don't need a lot of resources to form a good system, a good school system, or a good training process. All you really need is a little bit of love and some time and somebody who's got a brain in their skull to actually read and share information and share perspective. And that's what I've been doing. I'm a big believer in things like homeschools and stuff like that, because you have access to the internet. The internet is full of all kinds of professors like me who are constantly teaching. And so it's not as if access to information is a huge variable anymore. It's not a variable at all. So I want you to sort of be creative in terms of how you think about what it means to educate your kids. And I want you to be very proactive and assertive about ensuring that your voice is the number one voice inside the heads of your kids, so they don't end up, just sort of being misled and undereducated and everything else. Because I do think that while we can blame the system for not educating our kids, at the end of the day, when your child doesn't get what they need or your child is unprotected, that really is your responsibility. I don't think anybody else is going to make sure our kids are taken care of. That's going to be our job. All right. So let me get to reading The Black History Reader by Dr. Claude Anderson. His website is powernomics.com. Dr. Anderson sends his regards, by the way. He always loves you. And he's a great man. So in the beginning of his book, he gives a gratitude to his wife and his son, Brant. And he says in his acknowledgments, and I think it's important that we as Black men always take that time to thank the women who have our back. He married a smart Black woman just like I did. And his wife actually got her PhD at the same place that my wife did. We didn't know this until we were talking one day. And so Dr. Anderson, we have a couple areas where we just chop it up all day. Is one, our wives got their doctorates at the same place. But then also when I told him I was training to be an airplane pilot, I didn't know that he was a pilot in the war. And shout out to all the veterans, by the way. And he just, when we get on the phone, he just starts going through the whole procedure. He says, well, make sure when you land, you got to pull your flaps down. If you don't pull your flaps down, then it's going to mess up the landing. And then you got to use the VOR to know how to navigate to the airport. And the VOR is a directional indicator that tells you how to do blah, blah, blah. And check your windsock when you land so you know what the way, like he'll just go on and on and on. And I just love our conversations. But he also thanks his son, Brant. He says, I owe a debt of gratitude to those whose contributions enhance this work. I thank my wife, Joanne Anderson, PhD, my son, Brant Anderson, and Ed Sargent for their insights, suggestions, and editing. And Jessica Tilles, or Tiles, Tilles, for her editing, cover design, and layout. For photographs, I thank the U.S. Library of Congress and Gwen and Joe Ragsdale, who loaned photos from their Lest We Forget Slavery Museum in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Other photos came from my own personal collection. I thank Dr. Rosie Milligan. I met Rosie. She's a great lady, so smart, such a wonderful lady, for her moral encouragement. I believe she's out in L.A., and they have a really strong Black community out there in L.A. and South Central. I spoke in, I think it was Lemur Park. And I mean, those are some great Black people out there. Let's see. I thank Dr. Rosie Milligan for her moral encouragement, professional input, and friendship. Dr. Angela Finley Mollett, spokesperson for Black Indians United Legal Defense and Education Fund, and William Warrior for their continuous support and inspiration. So there's a table of contents, and in the first section, Dr. Anderson, what he does in this book, The Black History Reader, is he lets you know that this is a Q&A format of the book. And he says readers may choose to read it cover to cover or to select questions of particular interest. Each question must stand alone, so the reader will notice some repetition and reuse of foundation facts when it's necessary to discuss points. He uses an editorial style with which the reader may be unfamiliar. He capitalizes the words black and white out of respect for both races. He sometimes refers to descendants of slaves in America as native Blacks. He uses the term black, or he said, generally, I use the term black or blacks. I do not capitalize native in that instance because it's not an official census designation. So the same way you had at one point, you had, I guess, the ADOS, American Descendants of Slaves. And then you had another movement before ADOS, I think it was called Descendants of American Slaves, which actually I believe came out of Louisville, Kentucky, where I'm from. Then you have Foundational Black Americans, that movement. And then we have sort of our B1 movement. I think a lot of them have a lot of overlap. And also Dr. Anderson talks about Native Blacks. So he started talking about Native Black people before ADOS, Descendants of American Slaves, before B1, before all this, right? So most of what we do is a continuation of something else, right? And I think it's very important for anybody who's under the age of even 60 or 70 to just all of us to know that that the things we think are new are things that some of our ancestors were working on night and day a long time ago. Maybe they just didn't have the same platform. I'm pretty blessed and fortunate. Even when I lost my 430,000 followers on Instagram, I still have millions on Facebook, millions on, because I have pages they don't even know that I own. I have over 1 million on YouTube, stuff like that. So I saw that as an opportunity to amplify that message. But the thing that's really important, and this is what we did in the B1 film, is I wanted to make sure that everybody who kind of came up with the ideas before us got full credit, because I don't think it's a matter of who gets the credit. I don't care about being known as the original revolutionary. In fact, if somebody called me that, I'd say, no, that's wrong, because there are so many great people who did great things before us that we have to make sure we remember. Like, for example, I think it's absolutely criminal that all of our children don't know about Marcus Garvey by the age of 5. They know about George Washington. They learn about the slave master before they learn about people who liberated the slaves. I think that we should all know about Marcus Garvey. I think we should all know about A.G. Gaston in terms of wealth building. We should all know about the individuals who founded Black Wall Street, things like that, like O.W. Gurley and the many others who were involved in that process. Because an O.W. Gurley, who created Black Wall Street, is far more important than, say, an Oprah Winfrey or a Bob Johnson. Not that these individuals don't matter, but O.W. Gurley was really significant because O.W. Gurley, he didn't create Black Wall Street because he had nothing better to do. He didn't create Black Wall Street because he had no other opportunities. He had all the good jobs offered to him because he was very qualified. He had lots of opportunities, but he created Black Wall Street because he wanted his people to have an opportunity to have a better life. That's what he wanted. And so So he created the system. He didn't just buy a bunch of land and invite a bunch of people out there. I mean, that was part of the process, right? He had to recruit people to join him out in Oklahoma, where he bought this land that nobody wanted and turned it into something special. But when he got them out there, he had to sort of get them on the same page. He had to get them on the same code. And in doing that, what he effectively had to do was he had to develop an economic system. He became the administrator of an entire economy. And as a result of that, you didn't just have a space where people lived together. That's all nice, but it was deeper than that. You had a space where people were able to thrive together. And it wasn't just a matter of having a couple of rich people, because that's what we have now. For example, in hip hop, there are a lot of rappers who individually are very wealthy, or we have a few Black billionaires out here and multimillionaires. But it was a system that said, sorry. It was a system that said that we're not just sort of sitting around here being wealthy capitalists while everybody else suffers. We're actually creating an ecosystem where one group can build wealth and build a lot of it, but then everyone else is going to benefit too. And this is, in my view, this is a distinction I want you to pay attention to, because, this idea, I have to say this a lot just so people make sure they understand this. A lot of times I get people will misidentify me and they'll say, I believe in Black capitalism too. Black capitalism is how we're going to be successful. Black capitalism is what's going to get us out of this. And the truth of the matter is that Black capitalism isn't going to get us out of anything. Black capitalism, if it's done like white capitalism, will just be another harmful economic system that exploits people. If you understand how capitalism works, you'll know that Eurocentric capitalism is designed to basically allow a small percentage of people to do extremely well, while the masses end up doing all the work. And if you want to see a good example of it, look in the United States. The United States is a prototype of that extremist capitalism that's extremely harmful for a lot of people. Now, right now, I like touring the world. I like going into different countries. And like when I went to China, I was constantly sending you guys tons and tons of feedback on what I was seeing in terms of economic systems in China. And what I noticed in China was just how many entrepreneurs they had, most of whom never went to college and never studied business, anything like that, right? So that demystifies this idea that in order for you to be a wealth builder, or in order for you to be an entrepreneur, you have to go to school. That's just simply not true. But the thing I've seen in Europe here, let me tell you what I've seen in Europe. Since I went to Iceland, I went to Sweden, I went to Denmark. In Iceland, Sweden, and Denmark, let me just say this. I have almost never seen a homeless person anywhere. I kid you not. I have gone to lots of places, traveled quite a bit. I rarely see a homeless person. I don't think I saw a single homeless person in Iceland, not one. But I saw maybe two that looked homeless possibly in Denmark, but they were nice people. One guy came up and started talking to me, and we talked for a good 10 minutes. He was walking with me and he was like, "Hey bro," I guess because I'm Black, he wanted to talk to me. I was like, "Hey, how you doing?" And I'm guarding my bag and make sure he ain't gonna try to pickpocket me or whatever. But I didn't have any problem talking to him. He reminded me of some of my relatives, to be honest with you. So we talked a long time, and he wasn't harmful or anything. But if you go to the United States, do we have a homelessness problem in the U.S.? Give me a yes or no. Does anybody live in any of those cities where homeless is everywhere? It's all over the place. Do we have a homeless problem in the United States? Yes or no? And do you think that if we were to reconsider our economic model, that we could address that homelessness problem in a significant way? Give me a yes or no. Do you think that if our billionaires paid a little bit more in tax, we could solve that problem? Do you think that if our government was not as controlled by money, we could solve the homelessness problem? Do you think that if we actually gave a damn, we could solve the homelessness problem? Yeah, we could. We just don't care. But if you live in San Francisco, you live in especially San Francisco, places like San Francisco, Seattle, Portland, stuff like that, homelessness is everywhere. It's absolutely out of control. It's terrible. Here, I've rarely seen a homeless person. Another thing I haven't seen here is I don't recall seeing a single fat person. And I'm telling you, I have seen thousands of people while I've been here, thousands and thousands of people. I've not seen a single fat person. I kid you not. In the United States, it's the exact opposite. Has anybody noticed the obesity epidemic in the United States? How bad obesity is and how so many people are getting cancer. I talked about cancer openly because it's happening in my family. And so, it's everywhere. Right. And so, I find it ironic that here I can't find an obese person anywhere. I was looking, I went live with you guys and I said, let's play a game. Let's play a game called Find the Fat Person. And I pointed my camera in every direction at every single person I could see, and did not see a single fat person that we could find. No, none of you could find a fat person. And so, why is that? Well, because they, number one, they put different things in the food because they're not just trying to make money. They're trying to make sure that people are healthy. Number two, they incentivize exercise. Thousands of people ride their bikes to work every day and just ride around. You go to a bike rack, there'll be like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of bikes everywhere. And I'm not gonna belabor this point, but because I'm not gonna sit here and say this society is perfect. I'm sure they have their issues too. But another thing I noticed is that the streets are clean. I don't see any shoot ups. There's not a whole bunch of shooting and guns and everywhere and everything everywhere. You go to my home city, Louisville, Kentucky, there's shootings every day. Cities like Chicago, where I also spend a lot of time, our kids are being shot up constantly. Guns are everywhere. We have a gun problem in the United States. Do you agree? Do you agree that we have a problem with guns? It's guns everywhere. When I met with Minister Farrakhan and we sat for 2.5 hours, best conversation I ever had. It was just me and him and my manager at the time. And we just had a great talk. And I remember him saying that in the US, there's more guns than people. And that's capitalism. That's capitalism talking. Guns are profitable, right? So, and I could keep going down the list. I could talk about education. In fact, I should talk about education. Do we have an education problem in the U.S.? Are our kids being poorly educated in the U.S.? Give me a yes or no. The answer is yes, right? In Chicago, there are 55 public schools that don't have a single child that can read, write, or do math at grade level. We know this. We've talked about this. I was in Germany once, and I went to eat at Subway, and the guy in front of me, he was Italian. And so the Subway guy, the guy making the sandwiches, who's probably making minimum wage or something, he starts speaking to the guy in German, and the guy says, "No, I speak Italia, whatever." Right? He starts speaking Italian. So the Subway guy instantly starts speaking Italian to take his order. So he takes his order in Italian, and then he gets to me. He starts taking my order in German, and I'm like, I knew just enough German to say I don't speak German. Right? That's it. I was in Mannheim, Germany for 6 weeks. I was with the Center for European Economic Research for that 6-week period. I was doing a research stint back when I was on the faculty of Syracuse, and I was like, I don't know German. And then instantly the guy starts switching to English. He takes my order in English. And I thought about that. I said, this is crazy that the guy who works at Subway, the guy behind the counter making minimum wage, just right in front of me spoke 3 languages. He speaks at least 3 different languages. Do you see that typical? Is that typical? Do you typically see a McDonald's employee or a Subway employee or a Burger King employee that can speak 3 languages? Has anybody ever seen that before? Does that exist? No, because we have kids that get jobs at fast food restaurants who literally are totally illiterate, who literally have to have pictures of the food on the cash register because they can't read the word hamburger. So ultimately, what my point is saying all this is to say that when you're talking about building Black society, I don't think you should try to build Black society as some sort of model or replica of white society. Like, I don't think that we should look at white people as some sort of benchmark for what Blackness is supposed to look like. I don't think that terms like equality are beneficial to us, because if equality means being the same, I don't want to be the same as what we see in America. I want something better. I believe that we can have prosperity and wealth and everything else and still make sure that everybody's good, make sure everybody gets an opportunity, make sure everybody's taken care of. Okay. So that's where I get off the bus when it comes to Black capitalism. And I want to make sure we talk about that so we can understand what we're trying to do economically with our families. And also, as you succeed and you start to prosper, how you can form an economic model where you're able to prosper, but you're also able to create prosperity for others. You're not sort of this one successful Negro that everybody celebrates. You're a successful Black person who's able to translate that success through things like job creation for others, opening doors for others, spreading the wealth in some significant way. And this is where the building comes into play. For example, I challenge all the hip hop artists that have made millions of dollars. I say, well, can you go out and create thousands of jobs? Don't just make a song about how wealthy you are. I don't want to hear about you rapped about how rich you were in the other song. I already heard that. Now tell me how many jobs you're creating. Tell me how many people whose lives are better because your life is better. Or is your goal to simply be the capitalist that sits on the top of the pile while everybody around you is struggling? So same thing with churches. There's nothing wrong with a church having millions of dollars in their building fund. There's nothing wrong with the church collecting millions of dollars every Sunday. I don't have any problem with that. I think that if your pastor is serving you and has your back and is loving you the way you need to be loved and motivating you properly, they should receive an economic benefit for that. There's nothing wrong with them receiving an economic benefit, and that should not be your sole obsession. But what does also have to happen is that the community around that church needs to be benefiting as well. The congregation should be benefiting as well. And you want to really study the art of creating systems and economies where you spread prosperity and you spread success. Just like if you had a cold, you could spread that cold, except instead of it being a cold, you're spreading something positive. Okay, so that's how but so it's the thoughtful proliferation of economic systems that can lead to these possibilities. In fact, in the Black Business School, in my book, if you want to go take a look at my book, The 10 Commandments of Black Economic Power, I talk about things like the 3 C's of what it means to build an economy. And so I want every person that's a wealth builder to learn how to build an economy, not just to learn how to build wealth for themselves. And so that's the whole premise of the book. The book is it's on Amazon. You can take a look, or you can also go to drboycebooks.com. If you go to drboycebooks.com, you can get 30% off the book or anything in the bookstore. Just use the code word book club, BOOKLCLUB, just all one word. Use the code word book club and you can get 30% off anything in the store, and you can find it at drboycebooks.com. Okay, so let me keep reading here in the Black History Reader. I'm gonna read the introduction. Dr. Claude Anderson, his books at powernomics.com. He says, within a nation that perceives itself as the world's greatest superpower, worldwide police force, and home for all immigrants seeking the so-called American dream, Black Americans are a forgotten people who remain an impoverished outgroup and an abandoned labor class. After nearly 500 years of institutionalized slavery, Jim Crow, semi-slavery, public policies of benign neglect and political correctness, Blacks are consigned to the lowest level of this nation's ranking order of social acceptability. In this book, I try to answer the question of why, right? You didn't just hit the bottom rung by accident. This didn't just happen by coincidence. This wasn't just happenstance. This was all according to plan. He says, in coming to an understanding of the fixed position of Black America at the bottom of the well, we must first come to terms with what has changed and what has not changed in race matters, especially in urban areas, immigration, economics, and other aspects of policy in the United States. The internal strength of the country is connected to the fate of Blacks, a significant population group within the country. There are mutual benefits for mainstream society and Black Americans to fully understand the nature of the Black dilemma. Although race is an uncomfortable and almost taboo topic for those who truly want Black people to be a self-sufficient group within American society, race must be examined. But any examination must be based on an understanding of history and facts. In all my books, my goal has been to clarify the issue of race for the purpose of corrective action. That is also the case in this book, A Black History Reader. So it's very important to understand the difference between talking about racism versus just whining about racism. When you're whining about racism, you're just simply proposing what happened, and you're not talking about any solution. You're not talking about any way to move forward, any way to advance, any way to gain any sort of self-sustainability. That's what you do when you whine. And I can tell you, as a mathematician, there's never been a math problem I've run into where I could solve that problem by whining about it. Believe me, there were math problems I saw when I was in graduate school that made me want to cry, but I knew that crying about the problem wasn't going to be a solution. It might make me feel better temporarily, but it wasn't going to be a solution. And it's not as if I sat around crying about the problem, that someone would come along and solve the problem for me because I was crying about it. That wasn't how things worked when I was in graduate school. You had to come up with a solution. So whining about a problem doesn't solve it, but talking about it can help you gain insights. So when I was in graduate school studying math, we would get a math problem on Monday. And the math problem, this is where I learned the importance of meditative thinking and really processing things. So let's see here. The page number. By the way, we're still in the introduction. Chanel's asking, could you let us know the page numbers? Yeah, this is at the very beginning of the book. This is the introduction. And he talks about the purpose of the book, things like that. So it's not even, the page number is literally in Roman numerals. So I want to make sure we give Dr. Anderson respect by covering the book. So in its entirety. So that's where we are, Chanel. So here's the thing. So when I was studying math, and I used to teach math at the University of Kentucky back in the day, we used to get a math problem every week. And on Monday, we would get this problem, and it was really hard. It was an impossible math problem to solve. I'd never seen it before. It was the scariest thing in the world. And I'd have no clue what the solution was. And what would happen is you had to solve the problem, right? So I'd be scared to death, but I knew I had to do it if I wanted to graduate. So on Monday, you had no idea what the problem, how to solve the problem, but you had to solve it. So you think about it, you talk to your friends about it, you'd analyze it, you'd look at it 10,000 different ways. And then by Tuesday, you'd learn a little bit more. By Wednesday, you'd learn a little bit more. And the whole week, what would happen is you'd be obsessing over the problem. You'd really obsess over it, like somebody obsessing over a lover who scorned them or something, right? You'd just be obsessing over it, thinking about it constantly, and not even be dreaming about it. I would have dreams that I was sitting there at the chalkboard solving this math problem. I kid you not. And that was the power of the subconscious mind. That was when I first was introduced to the fact that your most powerful part of your brain is actually not your conscious mind; it's the subconscious. It's like if your conscious mind is the tip of the iceberg, the subconscious is the whole iceberg. The subconscious is like a supercomputer you carry around with you every day. So sometimes things like meditation or just sleeping on it can help you gain insights into a problem that you didn't have before. So this is the reason I share this is also because a lot of you maybe have businesses or things you're trying to figure out. And I guarantee you that if you keep thinking about it and talking to people and processing things and sleeping on it, each day you're going to get a little closer to the solution. So here's what would happen every single week. It was like a magical thing. By the following Monday, I always had the solution to that problem. And it's crazy. I would think, wow, this is amazing that on the previous Monday, I saw this problem. I was intimidated. I had no idea how to solve it. But by the following Monday, I'd have the solution every time. So that taught me the importance of dissecting and analyzing problems in order to find the solution. And not spending all your time being scared of the problem or whining about the problem. Just keep looking at it. Look at it over and over again. Like when I teach a class, there are some classes I've taught, like for example, I've taught stock options 100 times. Every single time I teach stock options, I learn something new. I look at the same thing. I look at it from a different angle. I look at it upside down, backwards. I look at it. I use a different analogy, and I'm like, oh, that's really like this. Oh, that's really like that. And in a way, it's kind of like you looking at your house. Like I've lived in this house for years, but I could probably if I looked at that house with a fine tooth comb, I would find out so many things about that house that I did not know. Right. So like, for example, my wife told me the other day that something happened with one of our windows where we were melting the siding on our neighbor's house. And I said, how were we melting the siding on our neighbor's house? She said, well, because the sunlight was hitting the window and it was reflecting onto the neighbor's house and it was causing it to melt. So we got to get a screen put on our window to stop it from melting the neighbor's siding on their house. Right. And I was like, wow, I didn't know our house could do that. Right. So what I'm saying to you is that, that house could be analogous to your life. It could be analogous to your relationship. It could be analogous to your business or your economic goals. It could be analogous to your family. Analyze that house. Look at it from different angles and keep sort of reconstructing it so you can really, really gain the insights. And then what will happen is you'll have a keen understanding that will lead you to solutions that other people may not see. Okay. All right. So let me keep going here. And by the way, Chanel, keep sharing that link. As you guys know, thank you for sharing that link for next week's stock options masterclass. Again, you guys can join for 72% off. So we're going to do that for the next 2 weeks. And I'm doing that because a lot of you wanted me to do something like this. And so I could only set it up during the book club time. But what I'm going to try to do is when I get some spare time, I'll just try to do a book club thing and send you guys a text and let you guys know that I'm live. So if you want to be notified when I go live, one thing you can do is go to Dr. Boyce Telegram. That's one way you can sort of be notified. I'll try to let you guys know in advance. Also, if you text the word stock to 31996, I'll also send out a text message. So we'll still do book club gatherings, but I won't be able to do them at our regular scheduled time. We're going to do the stock options masterclass. And if you click that discount code, you can get 72% off if you'd like to join and learn more about it. It's really fun stuff and beneficial to you. All right. So let me read here. So Dr. Claude Anderson, in his introduction, he says that in coming to an understanding of the fixed position of Black America at the bottom of the well, we must first come to terms with what has changed and what has not changed in race matters, especially in urban areas, immigration, economics, and other aspects of policy in the United States. He says the purpose of the Black History Reader is threefold. The first purpose is to present to the reader the nation's constitution-based social construct that historically established and fixed the racial relationship between Blacks and whites. So this relationship was one that was designed in a specific way. When you talk about white supremacy was designed by someone. They thought through what that construct would look like, and that's the America that you're living in right now. He also says the Constitution was the nation's first affirmative action plan. That's interesting, right? In light of the debate about affirmative action. He says it assured the maldistribution of nearly 100% of the nation's wealth and resources into the hands of whites, who subsequently bequeathed those unearned wealth, power, rights, privileges, and resources into the hands of succeeding generations of whites. Contrarily, the descendants of slaves were left impoverished and powerless. This constitution-based disparity between blacks and whites was kept intact by the U.S. Supreme Court, the chief guardian of racism, and other courts, educational institutions, conservative ideology, and extra-legal activities of groups such as the KKK, the White Citizens Council, and the modern-day Freedom Party. So Dr. Anderson is basically saying that that the Supreme Court, the original Constitution was an affirmative action program for white people. And what it did was it transferred most of the nation's wealth and resources into the hands of white folks who passed that wealth down to their children. And that's why if you go through, give me a yes or no, if you go through the city of Chicago and you look at all the skyscrapers that are worth more than $100 million, do you think any of those skyscrapers are owned by black people? Have you ever seen a $100-200 million skyscraper that was clearly owned by a black-owned company? There's thousands of them. I mean, it's got to be at least 10 or 20 or 30 or 50 or 100, right? Are any of the, if you go through downtown Denver or downtown Seattle or downtown New York, do you see $100 million, $200 million, $300 million skyscrapers that are owned by black people? Yes or no? What do you guys think? Is that what you guys see when you go there, or do you see something different? The answer is no, right? There are no, you don't see this, right? And this is something that we're used to. We just take this for granted. We just assume, okay, white people own everything, right? Well, how did that happen? How was this nation built where one group has everything, one group has nothing? Well, a lot of it obviously can be seen in history. When you think about, for example, Juneteenth, we're taught to celebrate Juneteenth. And I'm not going to say that there's nothing to celebrate, right? There were some benefits from being moved from being unpaid slaves to being paid slaves. But that's what Juneteenth was. They were forced to go back to the plantation. Their wages were chosen by their masters. And then they went from being slaves to sharecroppers. And sharecroppers are basically people that have so much debt that they'll never work themselves out of debt. So you're pretty much stuck forever. So modern day sharecroppers are people that have so many student loans, for example, that they can't quit their job because they have to keep paying back this illegal debt that was accumulated through student loans. That was designed in a specific way, because if you're deep in debt and you have to repay and they can force you to repay, then you got to keep working. And capitalism needs people to do the work. So here, Dr. Anderson says in the intro of his book, The Black History Reader, he says the second purpose of this book is to declare exceptionality of the descendants of slaves in America, their unique and substantive contributions to the developments of this country, and their maltreatment by all segments of the society. Their exceptionality distinguishes them from any other group in America. The third purpose of this book is to highlight the acute need in Black America for long overdue reparations. So remember, Dr. Anderson wrote this book years ago. He was talking about reparations way before it became a political topic. Now it's becoming a topic. Now the country is talking about reparations. And it's going to be a doozy. I was talking to a really nice guy who's a white liberal who's really, really trying to do the right thing. And I said, I respect you immensely, but you don't see black men like me. Black men like me, we're not begging. Black men like me, we're not stupid. Black men like me, we don't need to be led. Black men like me, we're reclaiming our communities. And I said, I have nothing against anybody like you. I think that people like you that want to help are good for the world. I said, but if you really want to help, you need to understand that this reparations topic is going to be a political hotbed in the near future, because most white people do not support reparations. Most Democrats don't support reparations. Most Republicans don't support reparations, largely because they generally see black people as a subordinate class. And they sort of believe that we are not capable of managing our own resources. They believe that we're not intelligent enough to know what to do with money. They'll say things that are actually heavy insults. Like, if you write them a check, they're just going to waste it. And we know people who would do that. A lot of us know people who are going to waste their money. But first off, it's my right. If I want to waste my money, it's my right to do that. But second of all, there are lots of people who would not waste that money. There are lots of people like you and I who would take that money and build various forms of generational wealth. So one of the misconceptions of black people being economically free is that we're going to waste that opportunity. And that's similar to how, pay attention now, that's similar to how a lot of white folks felt when we were going to be free from slavery. They said, man, these Negroes, we believe anybody should be a slave. But Lord Jesus, if we let them all out, it's going to be chaos up in here. It's going to be like having a pack of gorillas run around downtown New York. And Dr. Anderson points this out. This is why I love him. He points out the fact that after slavery, most whites in the North did not want the slaves to be freed and sent up north. They were like, we theoretically, it's similar to what you see now, right? For example, a lot of my friends on the left, they believe in supporting homeless people, but if you try to put a low cost or low rent housing for the poor near their neighborhood, they say, no, we don't want that over here. Or they maybe support open immigration, but if you say, okay, let's take a busload of people from south of the border and drop them off in your neighborhood, they're like, oh, no, we don't want that. We don't want to touch it. We don't want those people around us. For affordable housing, thank you, Kendall, for saying, I don't know why the word affordable didn't come in my brain. It's not like it's a complicated word, right? But anyway, so effectively, it's kind of the same thing. They sort of looked at Black people the same way. They said, no, we don't agree with slavery as a general principle. And I thank them for that. I don't agree with slavery either. But this idea of having Black people living next to them, or Black people having the same opportunities as them, or Black people joining the same labor union as them, or Black people going to the same school, it's almost like people that love their dog, but they don't want their dog sitting at the dinner table. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, they might love the hell out of their cat, but they don't want their cat. They don't believe their cat can drive the family car, right? The cat is a protected class, but the dog and the cat are seen as an inferior group, right? We don't believe in eating the dog, but we don't see the dog as our equal. Do you understand what I mean? So so for Black people, I think that's where you are, right? You're seen, you're kind of loved as almost like, unfortunately, we're loved like the family dog. And there are people that generally try their best to be as kind as they can to Black people. And I've seen that. I've seen white liberals be very as considerate as possible. And every little thing, they're very, very sensitive about it. And any little thing that was any little indiscretion or disparity that was marketed to them on CNN, they're very sensitive to that. Like, gosh, I met a white guy. He's a real nice guy. He's married to a Black woman. And he was sort of like, if we have kids, I'm really worried about our son. If we have a son, him interacting with the police. I mean, I'd be afraid if he even saw a police officer, because terrible things that happen. And I said, yeah, I get that. I understand police can engage in extreme misconduct, but I've interacted with a lot of cops and nothing bad's ever happened. I'd never had been shot at or anything like that. Not to say it can't happen. It can happen. But the times I've been possibly shot at or almost got shot was with another Black man in the hood, just because I was 21 years old and his girlfriend started talking to me. He pulled up. I kid you not, this is a real story. He pulled up right next to me, and he got up and he went to his trunk with a very determined look on his face. And I saw him reach in his trunk and pull out a shotgun. I said, I think it's time for me to go. These are real stories. These are things that happen, right? So my point is to say that I think that when you're talking about a fight like reparations, that's going to be your own fight. I don't really think there's anybody that's really going to stand up for the type of reparations we really deserve. So it's going to be a very hard fight. You're going to lose a lot of friends over this fight. And it's going to start in the 2024 election that's coming up, because there are already stories about how a lot of Black people are not going to vote or not going to participate. And it's very upsetting to the Democratic Party, of course, for obvious reasons. I don't know how they're going to negotiate this. And all the Republicans that are seeking to recruit Black people by saying, oh, we're better than the Democrats. Well, most of those people don't support reparations either, right? So these dividing lines are starting to be drawn in the sand. I want you to pay attention to that. All right, so let me keep reading here. This is The Black History Reader by Dr. Claude Anderson. His website is powernomics.com. Everybody should get his books. It's a great book if you want to teach your kids Black history. The third purpose of this book is to highlight the acute need in Black America for long overdue reparations. I already said that. It is my hope that this book, Empowernomics, the national plan to empower Black America, will inspire new thinking from which we will grow a more conscious class of Black leadership that will design and assert a new transformative social construct, including a new Black code of conduct that puts the interests of Blacks foremost. A new social construct will require society to unlearn prevailing myths, lies, assumptions, and distortions about Blacks, whites, racism, and political correctness. This shift will not come easily. It will be met with pushback by mainstream society and many in the Black overclass, which is made up of Black civil rights leaders, ministers, and elected officials. So this is, this is again Dr. Anderson talking about things that have been around for a long time. But he's specifically saying kind of what I was just saying to you, that when you start really advocating for yourself, you're going to just end up losing a lot of friends. And he's saying that that this shift in consciousness it's not going to be easy, because you're going to have mainstream society that's going to be angry at you. Like, why aren't you going along with the program? You're also going to have a black overclass that you have to be really careful about. And traditionally, the black overclass was the civil rights leaders, ministers, elected officials. Now it's become a lot of entertainers and hip hop artists who are sort of there to gatekeep and to keep black people in our place. And I'll still never forget. I'll never forget how much pushback Russell Simmons got when he and I were working together to challenge the Obama administration to shift their incarceration policy. I didn't think it would be that hard to do. I kid you not. I thought that this is easy. This is a slam dunk, because Obama and his team said this is what they wanted to do. So they're just keeping a campaign promise because it was about things like the crack to powder disparity, stuff like that. And I can just tell you, I was really shocked by how hard it was. And I was also shocked by the sacrifice Russell had to make in order to follow through with this, because they didn't really mess with me because I'm not as famous as Russell. And also they kind of had learned years before, when I was around Al Sharpton, they learned that I wasn't really going to go along with whatever they were trying to do. Right. So they didn't really try to do much with me. There was one time where Valerie Jarrett put pressure on Sharpton to put pressure on me, and it didn't work. I just pushed back and I said, who do you think you're talking to? You don't talk to me like that. Whereas with Russell, he was a celebrity. He's an entertainer. And I think they underestimated how committed Russell was to solving the incarceration problem, because we both have pain associated with that. We've seen our loved ones hit by this incarceration issue. And they just really put the hammer on him badly, because he gotten all these celebrities for the first time. All these celebrities aligned for a purpose that was generally going to benefit black people. And I have to give credit for even some of the celebrities that aren't black. I mean, a lot of black celebrities did sign the letter. I wrote this letter, and a lot of people signed it, from Will Smith to Chris Rock to all rappers, Rick Ross, Lil Wayne, people like that. And then also we had some white celebrities that did sign it. And Justin Bieber was the guy who pushed it over the top. When Justin Bieber tweeted out that hashtag, which was in the war on drugs, it became the number 3 trending hashtag on the planet. And that's when the Obama administration made an announcement to kind of deal with that. But up until that very last moment, they were putting so much heat on Russell. And I was sitting there just watching. I watched the celebrities say, okay, what are you made of? How strong are you? Are you going to start going on the apology tour like everybody else? Or are you really going to stand your ground? I have to give credit where it's due. He stood his ground. And I told my friends, I said, I was really skeptical because the celebrities make me nervous because they're so squeamishly connected to the system. He really stood up on this issue. And so you do have some celebrities who really do care. And I think some of them maybe have to be shown how to care. And I would say that one way to care is you have to be able to understand how to disconnect just enough from the system so the system can't control you. That means independent wealth. If you have independent wealth, you can kind of do a lot of the things that you want to do, and so that means that you can't be sort of this person that just sells out to the highest bidder or needs to make as much money as possible. You want to be a person that understands the double and triple and quadruple bottom line that comes with being black. Money is the first step tool to free you from the constraints of the system, right? So a lot of you make your money, go get your money, go start your business, go invest, go build wealth, do whatever you got to do. Then once you have enough, secure yourself, right? And that's all we talk about in my book, The 10 Commandments of Black Economic Power. In that book, all I talk about is what financial security looks like, how to process financial security. Because once you become secure, you're free. You can do whatever you want. You don't have to be rich to be financially secure. That's another myth that a lot of people have, that you have to have $10 million in the bank and there's no amount of money that's too much or whatever. That's I don't agree with that. I think you can. I know people that make $40,000 a year who are financially secure and financially free. So what that means for you is going to differ person by person, but I encourage you to get that. So then at that point, you'll be able to kind of move and shake and do what you got to do without feeling like you're oppressed and controlled and constrained and all these other things. That is not necessary. And just so you know, my wife helped me create the Black Financial Therapy Department in the Black Business School, because what we found in our research was that a lot of our barriers to freedom and happiness and whatever are driven by trauma. trauma that we experience, right? And so maybe you have some financial trauma that gets you to the point where you become financially addicted. You have to keep making more money, or you never feel financially secure, or you're so scared to leave the plantation that you can't start that business or whatever. So I encourage you to get that help so you can really become whole psychologically, because slavery did a number on you. Slavery, there is such a thing as the slave mentality. There is such a thing as post-traumatic slave disorder. There is such a thing as significant amounts of anxiety and depression that exists among Black people. And a lot of this is due to the fact that you're economically constrained. They bring you into the world as a slave. You're forced to live as a slave. And then many of us will die as a slave. Well, you have to fix that. So that's where things like the $5 a day investing plan come into play. That's where things like wealth planning come into play. That's where things like therapy can come into play. So look at all these things as ways to kind of get you where you want to get to. And then more importantly, to make sure your kids are not stuck the way a lot of us are stuck. Okay. So, and by the way, some of you were asking about that Telegram page. Yeah, if you go to drboycetelegram.com, that's a good way to join the Telegram channel. It's the Black Investors group on Telegram. So Telegram's better for us because YouTube and Facebook, they censor you and they block you from connecting and stuff like that. So just go to drboycetelegram.com and you can do that. Also, if you text the word stock to 31996, you can get on the text list. And what's another way to connect? Another thing too is the All Black National Convention. We've already lined up almost all of our speakers, so we don't need any more speakers. If you're applying, if you want to apply for next year, we'll send out the link for next year if you'd like to apply to speak or something like that. But if you want to be a vendor or you want to attend with your family, just go to allblacknationalconvention.com. The convention's going to be in Atlanta, October 20th through the 22nd. So allblacknationalconvention.com is where you can get that information. Okay. All right. And where can you get the book? Yeah, you can get my book, The 10 Commandments of Black Economic Power, either on Amazon or you can get it at drboycebooks.com. That's drboycebooks.com, and use the code word book club and you can get 30% off anything in the store, flashcards, anything that you want to get a discount on. All right. So let me read more here. He says, it is my hope that this book, Empowernomics, will inspire new thinking. Okay. We already talked about that. Newly trained thinkers who understand Powernomics principles and strategies will design a new social construct on race that will replace social integration and civil rights. So he's saying social integration and civil rights have to go. That's not, social integration and civil rights didn't really benefit you or as much as you thought. It's time to go to the next level. Very important. He says, from these new thinkers should arise new Black leadership who will produce a new legal infrastructure in which Blacks are included as system beneficiaries. Guide the Black masses to build functioning Black economic communities, set up Black independent political parties, and assert the value of Black lives. Isn't that funny? Look at Dr. Claude Anderson saying Black Lives Matter, but saying it in a very different way. So let me read that again. He says that these new thinkers, you're part of the new thinkers. And I'm not a Black leader. I'm not trying to claim that. Maybe I'm your teacher, maybe I'm your part of your support system, but I don't want to be a Black leader. I'm not trying to be the next Al Sharpton, because I believe that you should lead yourself, but I can guide you. I can support you in that. I'm part of your advisory council. Okay. So from these new thinkers should arise new Black leadership who will produce a new legal infrastructure in which Blacks are included as system beneficiaries. That's the first thing that's very important. You are a commodity to this system. You're not a beneficiary to this system. Capitalism has the people that benefit, and then capitalism has the people that get used to the benefit of others. So if you spend your life as a consumer, as a renter, and as an employee, then you are a commodity. You're being used. They're going to work you until you die and milk you financially every way that they can in every single system, from the education system to the economic system to the healthcare system. Every system will be designed to milk you so that people at the top can get very, very wealthy, right? Remember, you're already a wealth builder. The difference is that you're building wealth for other people. If you've paid your rent, how many of y'all pay your bills on time? Give me a yes in the chat if you paid your rent on time every month for many, many years. Give me a yes or no. Have you built your rent, or have you paid your rent consistently on time every single month? Give me a yes if you're in that category. Yes or no? Yes or no? What do you think? Okay, so you've been paying your rent on time every month, right? You pay your bills on time. You're a good citizen. Well, you're a wealth builder, because what do you think that the landlord is doing with that money? The landlord is taking that money and investing that money. The landlord is taking that money and they're putting that money into mutual funds and into real estate and into their 401k and into all these all these yield bearing assets, all these assets that they're invested in that are benefiting from compound interest. So they're building wealth for their family. So if you paid consistently $1,000 a month in rent for the last 20 years, well, remember the $5 a day investing plan is only $150 a month. So if you're paying, let's say you're paying $1,500 a month, just to make the math easy, so you can 10x that. So in the $5 a day investing plan, which by the way, if you go to drboycetelegram.com, I just put a link to that plan in there. So go to my Telegram page, you can get a copy of that for your family, drboycetelegram.com. According to that plan, in 20 years, by doing $5 a day or $150 a month, you would have about $100,000, give or take a few thousand, depending on how the market acts, right? So 10x that. 100,000 times 10 is what? It's $1 million. So you literally, by paying your rent on time, pay attention now. Are you hearing me? Give me a yes if you're hearing this. By paying your rent on time every month, you have made $1 million for somebody else. Somebody's family is $1 million. You've made them into a millionaire. But yet everybody's telling you constantly that you can't be a millionaire. But yet how in the hell did you make somebody else a millionaire if you can't be a millionaire? Seriously, if you pay $1,500 a month in rent consistently over the last 20 years, now again, $1,500 a month in rent was a lot 20 years ago, but rent keeps going up every month. And with inflation, the rent is sky high. You live in places like Atlanta, it's getting insane. Companies like BlackRock are buying up all the houses, pushing up the cost of housing. It's pushing up the cost of rent, everything else. And just as a FYI, since I've been here in Europe, one other thing that I noticed was I talked to someone in Denmark and they said, yeah, companies like BlackRock were coming to Denmark and buying all the houses, and it was pushing up the cost of the houses and the cost of rent. And you know what they did? They did something the US would never do. They passed a law that said that basically you can't come in here and buy up all of our property as an investment. They put rules in place, little things like you have to physically live in the property that you own, or you have to, you can't raise the rent for 5 years. They put these little safeguards in place to keep the property values from going crazy. You think they'll ever do that in Atlanta? You think they'll ever do that in New York, Chicago, all these other places? No, they're not going to do that. So effectively, my point is to say that you, by paying your rent on time, you made somebody into a millionaire. If you paid your car note on time, you've probably made several $100,000 for somebody. So you're already a wealth builder. You're already doing everything you need to do in order to build wealth. You're making consistent payments every month on time to something, right? Now, what I'm saying to you is keep doing what you're doing, but then make sure you do that for yourself. Make sure that you're the beneficiary on the other end. So the same way you can make consistent payments to the car dealer for a $500, $600 car note every month, well, you can make consistent payments to your index universal life policy. Shout out to Aisha Verzi. I don't know if Aisha Verzi's in here, but Chanel, please share Aisha's phone number so people can call and get a consultation with Aisha. She's a friend to the Black Business School, so I want to be a friend to her. I want this Black woman's business to blow up. I don't even know. I never met Aisha in person. I gave her a hug at my event, and I did have a one-on-one consultation with her. But besides that, I didn't know anything about Aisha, but I like what she does, and I like the fact she talks to you directly. So Aisha Verzi, that's her name. So Chanel, if you have her information, you can put it in the chat. I'd appreciate it. But anyway, if you can make that regular $500 a month payment to the car dealer, then you can make a $500 payment to yourself. Right? If you can make that $1,000 a month payment to the landlord, then you can make a $1,000 a month payment or a $500 a month payment or a $200 a month payment to yourself through your Index Universal Life or through the $5 a day investing plan or whatever. And the other thing too is, in addition to making these $500 a month payments to yourself, make those $500 a month payments to your family, to your children, so that your kids are in a position where they are going to be economically free, economically successful, economically independent. Okay. And this is not information that you have to go and pay for. This is information that you can apply right now. You can apply that today. Okay. So let me keep going here. So this is where Dr. Anderson and I partner. He talks about the big systematic elements. He understands politics better than I do. I don't trust politicians. When politicians ask me to endorse them, I just say, no, thank you. I'm not interested. But what I believe in is the politics of your own household, because a community is nothing more than a group of households. And so what I believe politically is in the importance of you establishing policies in your house that are going to make sure your children are protected, that your children are educated, that your children are well fed, and that the economic system within your house is one that is built around prosperity. That's what the book, The 10 Commandments of Black Economic Power, does. That's what it's all about. It's all about you and your family and what you control. And that's really a reflection of my own trauma, where I grew up being angry because things that I didn't control were not serving me. And then I remember, and it was simple little stuff. Like, I remember I hated having to wait for my mother to give me a ride. Anybody go through that, where you got somewhere to go and your mama ain't ready and it's 8:00 and you got to be there by 8, but your mama's still asleep or whatever. Or you got to ask for a ride or whatever. Or, cause you stuck it after football practice and ain't nobody there to pick you up, or whatever. Or you want to go to the skating rink with your friends. I used to go through that. I hated that, right? Because my mother was tired. She was working hard. And when I was about 14 or 15, my grandmother, the same person who taught me about economics, we named our panther after her. Her name was Felicia. She actually died of cancer. Again, that's why cancer makes me so mad. But anyway, my grandmother got me a moped when I was 15. And do you know, I rode that moped everywhere I went. Like, at that point, I didn't ask for a ride from anybody. It didn't matter if it was 50 miles away. I would get on my little moped, scoot down the road at 35 miles an hour, because I knew I could leave when I wanted. I could get back when I wanted, all that stuff. I liked that ability to shape my own outcome, and it felt very powerful to be able to do that. Maybe that's, who knows, maybe that's why I'm learning how to fly airplanes now, because I don't want to wait for the flight to get there for me to fly. I want to be able to go to the airport, get in my plane, and go, right? So ultimately, what I want us to be able to do as Black people is, I want us to, give me a yes if you get the analogy here. I hope this makes sense. Give me a yes if this is making sense. I want you to be able to go to the airport, get in your airplane, and fly. I want you to be able to hop on your little moped, even if it's not as fast as the white man's sports car, even if the white man got a turbojet, even if the white man has a motorcycle. It doesn't matter. I don't care if you got a 10-speed bike. At least that's your 10-speed, and you can take it wherever you want to go, because a 10-speed bike can go anywhere a Ferrari can go. It just takes a little longer, right? It's some of your little businesses, some of your little economic situations. A lot of us, we start small, right? Some of our little situations are tiny and seemingly insignificant, but I'm here to just remind you that it is so significant. You have no idea how important the little things you're doing right now are for yourself and for your children and for your grandchildren. They're absolutely, unbelievably, incredibly important. I talk about, for example, I was talking about UPS today, and how UPS was, they just avoided a massive strike. UPS drivers are making an ungodly amount of money now. I think they're making $170,000 a year. Congratulations to them. That's awesome. The Teamsters are good. And we need better yet labor unions anyway. I believe that. But anyway, I mentioned how UPS was founded by 2 teenagers on their bicycle. And I said, man, if we can understand that most of these great big corporations that you admire, everything you look up to, everything that's in awe for you, all these businesses start off with very humble beginnings. McDonald's McDonald's is worth hundreds of billions of dollars. It started off by the McDonald's brothers, who just knew how to make hamburgers and cheeseburgers really fast. They figured out a system to make cheeseburgers and hamburgers really quickly. And then that got scaled out by Ray Kroc, and it became McDonald's. Coca-Cola was started by a guy who literally invented the Coke formula with literal cocaine to help him overcome his morphine addiction from the Civil War. And the Coca-Cola brand was sold for maybe like $400 or $500 because unfortunately the drugs ended up costing him and his family. He ended up selling it off really, really cheap. And so effectively what happens is that when you don't see the long-term vision of what you have, or you let things distract you, like drugs have distracted so many of our families, you'll sell out really cheap. You'll sell your future out really cheap. And next thing you know, whatever you were going to have is gone. Or you look at an NBA athlete who makes $100 million and they get distracted by whether it's drugs or women, or which is another type of a drug, or whatever. And next thing you know, this chance to build a multi-billion-dollar fortune is gone. Or you look at Death Row Records, when Suge Knight and Tupac pretty much controlled the entire music industry. They had the most powerful entity in all of music, pretty much. It could have become Universal Records. It could have become, he could have become the next Clive Davis or whatever he wanted to be. But instead, he got distracted by bad culture. They ended up killing what could have become a $500 billion company, right? So, because there's no reason why Death Row Records, with as many hits as they were putting out, couldn't have become as big as Sony Music or whatever. The problem is that you had a rocket, and this rocket was headed to the moon, but nobody knew how to drive a rocket. People drove a rocket like it was a Corvette or something. They drove they guided the rocket like they were guiding their bicycle. And so the rocket ended up crashing, right? So what you need is you need kids that understand how to drive a rocket, because what's going to happen is they're going to run into some opportunity, a Suge Knight, Death Row Records level opportunity, or an opportunity like this Boston Celtics player who has an opportunity with this $300 million contract. And they're going to need to know how to drive this rocket and be able to visualize how far this rocket could go, right? If your vision is tiny, then your rocket will not go very far. You cannot go into outer space if you can't see past the end of the block, right? And that's the problem. You have people that literally have rockets that can go to outer space, but they can't even see past downtown Chicago. That's a challenge. That was part of my challenge. When I talked to some of the rappers and stuff, I talked to you guys a little bit about the conversations I've had with Kanye West and other people, and I'm my head's about to explode, because I'm sitting there thinking, do you know how much money? Do you know how much you could do in the Black community with even a fraction of that money that Adidas is paying you? Do you understand what it means to get a check for $20 million every 2 months? Do you know how many millions of lives you could change with this? And unfortunately, because our economic training isn't that strong, because we have not committed to making economic training a core value of our families, the people that get the rocket don't know how to drive the rocket, right? And it becomes just so infuriating, because we miss opportunities all the time. It's not like you don't have opportunities to have whatever you want as a community. The opportunities are everywhere. You just have to be able to see them and maximize those opportunities. So Dr. Anderson says here at the beginning of the Black History Reader, he says the civil rights movement, though well-intentioned, sought integration based on the assumption that all people were equal. Equality of the races was not intended under the Constitution. Blacks were designated specifically as a laboring class of property to be controlled by the dominant white society. Consequently, Blacks have never been able to acquire more than 0.5% of the nation's wealth or anything of value. Even after Blacks acquired voting rights, without wealth or political influence, their votes were easily rendered null and void. National immigration policies kept Blacks as the only permanent minority within a society where the majority wins and the minority loses. Blacks are now a permanent minority in every respect. For example, in two important sectors, politics and business ownership, Blacks represent less than 0.5% of the nation's elected officials and less than 0.5% of the nation's business owners. These historical conditions are not accidental. They reflect the enduring quality of the design of the founding social construct on race that was codified in the Constitution. These Constitution-based race disparities allowed whites to dominate and control Blacks in all respects throughout the centuries. Although Blacks were intended to be at the bottom, that status can be changed if Blacks in our society truthfully assess the circumstances created and have the courage and fortitude to take the necessary steps prescribed in this and my other works. The goal of my collective work is for Black America to become self-sufficient and competitive as a group. In A Black History Reader, I offer Black Americans and others who seek true racial justice a way to build a future in which the unique history and socioeconomic needs of Black Americans are considered. I invite you to join me in that quest. Begin reading now, then do the right things. So this is what Dr. Anderson says in the beginning of his book. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the first question, where he says, what is a social construct and how is it used in the making of America? And before that, I'll answer a couple of your questions I saw in the chat. Number one, you were asking, where's the Telegram channel of the Black Investors Group? Just go to drboycetelegram.com, or Chanel will put the direct link in there in the chat. So feel free to join the Telegram group. I'll probably send you guys something every day that's economic related or something that will benefit you. So feel free to join that. We're going to focus on that as opposed to building up on YouTube and Instagram and all that stuff. The second thing is the link for the convention. If you want to join us for the All Black National Convention, October 20th through the 22nd in Atlanta, Georgia, just go to allblacknationalconvention.com. We have a lot of big surprises for you guys at the convention, and we are going to show B1 the movie at the convention as well. So if you can't make the red carpet this weekend in Atlanta, we will also show it at the convention. So, but I will be in Atlanta this weekend. You can go to b1themovie.com. That's b1themovie.com. If somebody could type that in the chat, I'd appreciate it. It's b1themovie.com. That's the movie that we made. It took us years to make this film, and I just made another major business deal with someone that's going to help us go deeper into the filmmaking space. So we are so Boyce Watkins Films is definitely growing, and it's definitely a huge thanks to you. And it's also a conduit that will create opportunities for those of you that want to get into film projects and things like that. And what else did let's see, someone else asked another question that I wanted to mention. Oh yeah, the book, The 10 Commandments of Black Economic Power. The link you can go to get copies of any of my books actually is drboycebooks.com. That's drboycebooks.com. The code word is book club. If you use the code word book club, all one word, you get 30% off anything in the store, including flashcards, stuff like that. Let's see, someone says, will the movie air online anywhere? Yeah, Barbara, we're going to do a Black movie night at some point as well. So the live event at the New Black Wall Street in Atlanta this upcoming weekend is going to be for anybody that wants to be in that space and just sort of meet the people that are in the film. Riza Islam's going to be there with me and some other, I think Les Brown's coming, stuff like that. But then we'll also do a Black movie night. We'll do the All Black National Convention. I'm not going to show the film when I go to New York and LA though. We are going to do events in New York and LA very soon. So I'll keep you guys posted on that. Make sure you're on the Telegram, and then I'll just put that information there. drboycetelegram.com. Okay, let's see. Shamita's Pitch says, I'm waiting on my signed book now. Yeah, so it should be there soon. The kids, our kids run our family business. They ship out all of our books. So literally when you get your book, it's going to be shipped by one of our kids because, we practice what we preach. And so we run a small family business. And so if you get an autographed copy, they have me sign a bunch of books. And then once I sign them, they ship them out to you. So feel free to go take a look at that. All right, so let me finish. Let me read here. So this is page 1 of the Black History Reader, Foundation Concepts. Dr. Anderson says, what is a social construct and how is it used in the making of America? He says, a social construct is a purposely created idea developed by one group with authority that defines another group with lesser or no authority. So one group that's in power looks down at the other group and says, this is what you're going to be. Almost like I think in a way they almost view that group as being like less than them, right? Less than, right? This is what white supremacy does around the world, right? Not just in the U.S. You go to any country where white supremacy exists, you'll see where they impose rules and codes and laws that can create conflict within those groups. Like all the Hutus and the Tutsis that were killing each other in Rwanda, that was created by white supremacy. That was created by them coming in and drawing these artificial barriers between people to cause them to fight. Same thing happens in India, where you have the untouchables at the bottom, which tend to be the darkest people. The Aboriginals, if you go to Australia, same thing. You go to a lot of African countries, the borders were redrawn based on colonialism, right? So this construct is something that has been applied consistently, typically to control a group of people so they can extract something from them. It might be their labor, it might be their resources. It's crazy. Africa. I talked to a guy named Mohammed, who was our Uber driver, who drove us over to Sweden, and he was from Somalia, and he talked about how he claimed that Somalia. I think it was Somalia. I'm trying to make sure I get this right. He claimed that Somalia had more oil or as much oil as Saudi Arabia. Now I don't know if that's true. I got to confirm that, and I believe it was Somalia. I hope I didn't get that wrong. Anyway, we were talking about some interesting things. Me and Mohammed. I found it interesting that he was saying that. He was saying that the Arabs there were trying to basically create conflict and create these sort of terrorist incidents in order to keep the people unstable in that country, because in the midst of that instability, they're able to go in there and extract oil from that country. And then also that reminds me, I don't know if anybody heard about this, but there was a guy in Nigeria years ago named Ken Saro-Wiwa. Ken Saro-Wiwa was an activist in Nigeria who pointed out something that's very obvious. If you've ever gone to Nigeria, I've been to a lot of African countries, well, not a lot, a few African countries, Nigeria, South Africa, Nigeria, South Africa, Ghana, and two more. Not Zimbabwe, Botswana, and there's another one I can't remember. Anyway, one thing that Ken Saro-Wiwa said that was very obvious is he said it makes no sense that Nigeria has all this oil and you have so much poverty. If you've been to Nigeria, the poverty is absolutely disgusting. I'm 40% Nigerian, so I'm taking this personal. But the poverty in Nigeria is insane for how much oil that they have. There's no reason a country like that should have any poverty anywhere. And so he was protesting. He was basically saying, this is crazy, this is ridiculous. And so what happened was Dutch Shell, the European company that was coming in and extracting all this oil from Nigeria, they were complaining to the leaders. They were like, this guy is making it hard for us to drill our oil. This is the problem. And so the government officials went and killed him. They went and killed him on behalf of the Europeans that complained about him. So they kept their hands clean, but obviously they played a strong role in getting this activist killed because he wanted the Nigerian people to get access to the oil that's coming out of their ground. And this is the kind of stuff that happens all throughout the world. It happens in the Black community. Same thing. Whenever a Black activist in the United States really speaks up on behalf of all of the wealth and all the resources being extracted from Black people, whether it's through entertainment or through sports or anything else, that activist gets discredited or attacked, or they may not physically kill you all the time, even though they did kill Malcolm and Martin, and we know about those stories. And by the way, Ben Crump filed a lawsuit on behalf of Malcolm X's family. I don't know if any of y'all saw that, but I want to make it clear I support that lawsuit 100%, and I hope that family gets $100 million. And I hope, more importantly, the community gets the absolute truth on exactly what happened to Malcolm. I think we're piecing together everything. I know a lot of people that were kind of there at that time who've kind of shared, different stories, different perspectives. Guys I know from the Nation of Islam. I know people that were not in the nation who were kind of in that space. And it's an interesting story, interesting perspectives in terms of what happened. But anyway, the great thing that Ben Crump is doing right now is he's forcing out the truth. And I think you should pay attention to the truth because it gives you insights into how the CIA, FBI, and the authorities operate. And just and also the important point of understanding that they didn't stop operating in the 1960s. The CIA did not go away in the 1970s and 80s. In the 80s, they just switched over to delivering crack cocaine into Black communities. In the 1990s, I think they went into supporting mass incarceration by infiltrating the hip hop music industry. And causing a lot of the chaos that you see in the communities right now. So this isn't over. Lumumba, thank you. That's another name. I don't even know the whole history of it all, right? I'm not an expert on any of this, but these are things that I've seen. So I think that we have to pay attention to that and to know that they're probably doing things right now. If you had your eyes open at all during the pandemic, you saw the manipulation everywhere, and it wasn't just racially driven. I mean, part of it was race, where they suddenly show up acting like they care about Black people and they're telling us what to do with our health. But it also shows up, the pandemic showed up in terms of capitalism, and capitalism sort of creating this space where major corporations were able to use the federal government as bill collectors, like almost like the way the mafia has these bouncers, or these what do they call them? Paid assassins, if you will, to go in and collect money in case someone doesn't want to pay you back. So effectively, when the government was mandating and threatening people to get this product from Pfizer or Johnson & Johnson, that's about as corrupt as you get. When a capitalist entity is able to force consumers, enforcer, thank you. That's why am I not finding the right words? But anyway, these enforcers, so they were using the federal government as an enforcer to force you to buy their product. How great is that to have a product? I mean, they say that the best product to have is actually one that people are addicted to. That's why they designed social media to be addictive. They studied from therapists how to manipulate the dopamine level so you become addicted to social media. That's how Mark Zuckerberg makes billions of dollars on Facebook and all that stuff. But the best product is not one that you're addicted to. It's one that you're forced to buy, right? And so that's how the mafia makes their money. So our government kind of is the mafia at this point. So anyway, so Dr. Anderson also says this about social constructs on page 1 of the Black History Reader. He says, a social construct frames the perception of and the relationship between groups. That's white supremacy. White people here, Black people here. It becomes part of the culture, infused into the social norms and practices of every part of society, including legal, educational, financial, political, and interpersonal relationships. So in the legal system, the white supremacy is being implemented, right? In the educational system, financial system, political system, interpersonal relationships, all the way down to how somebody treats you when you go to the grocery store, or the fact that maybe a white guy might be afraid of you marrying his daughter or whatever. The most important social construct in America is race. The founding fathers purposely constructed the societal position of Blacks and whites. Blacks were to be property that served whites, and whites were to be the only beneficiaries of the new country that they created. So they created a construct where Black people were the servants and whites were the designated beneficiaries. And I think that is something that's still true to this day. And it's something that if you don't want that to harm you, you're going to have to bust out of that system. So if you're dependent on the system, if you have faith in all these systems, if you trust all these systems, you're probably going to get hurt. The educational system we know does not benefit you. We know the healthcare system is kind of insane. We spend more money than every country on the planet for healthcare, but we don't have very good healthcare. We're like maybe 30 or 35th in the world or something like that. The criminal justice system, same thing. The economic system, same thing. Media as a system, same thing. The university system, same thing. Right. So these hierarchies are imposed in various systems, and this is what one would say it means to be on code. Okay. All right. Now let me see here. Someone's asking, how can you listen to replays? Chanel, can you give that link? I think if you go to let me see. Check to see if that URL still works. I'm not sure if it's because sometimes the URLs don't work. I believe if you go to drboycebookclub.com, you can find the replays of all the book club meetings. Okay, yeah. Go to drboycebookclub.com. It's not free, but use the code word Dr. Boyce and you can get a discount if you would like to. Actually, the discount's already embedded. So feel free to go to drboycebookclub.com. We've been doing the book club for a while, and so all the replays are available. And if you don't want to do that, that's fine. It's up to you to decide how you want to access everything. But we have a ton of stuff that's there. We've been doing this for years now. All right, so let's keep going. Christopher Columbus discovered the new land that was to be America in the same time frame that the Pope declared that blacks from Africa should be made slaves. It was the promise of free land and free labor that fueled the rush of Europeans to settle the new land. To implement their plan for the free labor, Europeans designed the relationship between blacks and whites. So he's saying here that that basically, because of the free land, they came here to the U.S. But Dr. Anderson talks extensively about how land cannot be profitable if you don't have labor to work the land, right? Like who's going to clear the land? Who's going to manage the cows and the chickens and everything? Well, Dr. Anderson says that we were the ones who were supposed to do that, and that's what they codified. He says also the social construct on race was formally stated in the Articles of the Confederation and restated in the Constitution of the United States, as well as the first immigration laws. He says, I will discuss these documents in detail later in this book. The social construct on race is the thread that weaves through Black enslavement, U.S. Supreme Court rulings, laws, institutions, conservative and liberal ideologies, extra-legal, Ku Klux Klan, for example, activities, and all aspects of the nation's culture. It is fundamental to the founding of our country that blacks would always be pressed to the bottom and that whites would always retain superiority over blacks. That relationship endures to this day. The social construct on race was deliberate and permanent. It is so fundamental to the issue of race that the topic cannot be considered in any serious way without understanding it. It is therefore the first question in this book. So the first question Dr. Anderson asks in the Black History Reader, which you can get at powernomics.com, is, are Black Americans an official and socioeconomic underclass? So let me ask you all this question as we begin. Do you think that Black people are an official underclass? And actually, we're going to address that topic as well at the All Black National Convention. I'm really excited because we actually have the Black Doctoral Network, which is the largest organization on the planet of Black PhDs. They're going to be in the same building at the same time. And I talked to their president, Maurice Green. We're going to partner with them. They're going to be in there. So I'm really excited because you're literally bringing together the smartest Black people ever to solve problems specifically for the Black community in a way that's economically independent. And part of this is because in order for us to bust out of this status of being a permanent underclass to this point, we're going to really have to sort of tear down a lot of these constructs that we've come to lean on, right? And the thing is, though, you only have to tear down maybe 2 or 3 constructs in order for that to happen. First off, I think you have to tear down this idea that you need white people to educate your kids. I think that Black people should be the educators of Black children, no matter, even if it's through guerrilla warfare. That means you're educating your kids at home, you're getting on YouTube, you're talking to them about stuff, maybe you take them around the world. You should and travel with your kids, by the way, so they can get to see other countries. Don't keep them in the U.S. Exposure, exposure, exposure. That's so important. That's a message from my mother, by the way. My mother said that, she said, because she's worked with a lot of kids. She used to work, my mother got pregnant with me when she was 16. She gave birth when she was 17, and she attended something called the Teenage Parent Program, and then she eventually worked there. And one thing that my mother noticed in terms of the difference between the kids that did well and the ones that did not is exposure. If you expose kids to good things and different ways of living, different cultures, then they can have more choice as opposed to being stuck in the same culture, in the same space, the same toxicity. So you got to be able to expose yourself and expose your kids. In addition to that, other constructs, I think the economic construct, this whole go out and get a job culture, we've talked about this 1,000 times. That's just got to go. You got to kill that. Your kids, go out and start a business. Go out and get together with your friends and partner. I was talking to a young Black woman this weekend who works at a major university, a major Ivy League university, and she told me about the frustrations with her boss and how hard her job was. And I said, that the skills you have, I know people that make $1 million a year doing exactly what you do. The only difference is that they have their own company. And literally, after we talked for a little while, she told me that a couple of days later, she said, "I'm forming my LLC right now." I said, good, do that. Now jump into the culture. When they talk about the culture, there's also the entrepreneurship culture. It's not just about hip hop. It's about sort of how you choose to make your money and doing it in a way that makes sense for you. What's another system? I think looking outside the healthcare system, I think sort of busting outside of that and still utilizing the system if it benefits you, but just realizing that it's absolutely insane to me. When I'm over in Europe, it's so funny, not to put Europeans on a pedestal, but they have all these bikes. Everybody rides bikes, and they incentivize in the tax code for people to do things that are preventative when it comes to their health. It's simple. You exercise, you're not going to have things like obesity, which is going to reduce your likelihood of cancer, diabetes, strokes, heart attacks. Since when does our healthcare system ever incentivize you to take care of your health so you don't need to go to the doctor? They don't. There's no sort of implementation of any form of accountability. I was absolutely stunned during the pandemic when people were saying, "Oh, it doesn't matter how fat you are. It doesn't matter how unhealthy you are. Just get this shot, and that shot will protect you." Not to say that you should get the shot or not get it, but I just didn't understand why there wasn't a conversation on how we keep people from getting overweight in the first place. And so, so anyway, so let me keep going and let me read more of this question.